Hello guys, today I want to talk about a special video here. We're going to talk about the truth about Ford transmission sediment and the Ford DPS6 transmission. So we got a special PowerPoint slide here that's going to talk about everything. And basically we're going to explain it because, it was a year-long legal dispute, very complicated thing. So today this PowerPoint is basically going to put it in plain English so the average person like you or I can understand it. But before we do that, I want to talk about what the DPS6 transmission is and how it functions. Basically, it is a manual transmission. It operates with dual clutches, so it's a two-clutch system that's operated by a computer. So it works manually, but it's operated by a computer so that the user doesn't have to shift the gears. So it looks like an automatic and everything. So these cars were designed, the transmissions were designed to increase fuel efficiency. They're used in a lot of sports cars like Porsche or Ferrari, those type of vehicles. So that's basically how they function. Now, in 2009, 2010, in the design phase of the 2012 to 2016 Ford Focus and Fiestas, engineers did testing on these particular transmissions, and they kind of said, ho, Ford, wait a second here. We have some serious issues. And you can see there's an article about it. Behind Ford closed doors, Ford was warned by engineers. They were warned by their attorneys. The attorney said, don't sell these things. But they really discussed two options behind closed doors. They could either scrap the DPS altogether and it cost them a fortune to redo everything, or maybe it's not so bad. Maybe we'll just fix the problems as they come. So instead of doing things right and starting over, they half-assed everything and they rolled them out anyways. So people across the country and across the world began to experience transmission problems in their Ford Focuses and Fiestas. Some cars had 10, 20, 30,000 miles, 40, 50, and they'd have multiple clutch failures or multiple transmission failures. Some of them were out of warranty and it was happening. Some people even got the cars off the lot and they had to have the clutch replaced. There are several people here. This lady's out of Tennessee. It's hard to see her picture, but she had multiple transmission issues. This gentleman's story is very interesting. He was driving his Focus home from work. Transmission failed. He wasn't able to accelerate forward. He was 3 blocks away. So what did he have to do? He had to drive the car home in reverse, which is crazy. All right, now this lady here, this kind of hits home because this was in my city. She's in Mesa, Arizona. She bought a 2016 Ford Focus for her son. It had a clutch failure. This was one of the few cars they issued a recall on for this. However, her vehicle was 4 months outside of that recall. So she got Channel 3's Gary Harper involved, and he contacted Ford, and they really didn't even do much, even with the media coverage. They offered to look at the Ford. Miss Mayfield still had to pay for the diagnostic, and they said, nope, we're not paying for the repair. We're not buying back your vehicle. And to top it off, she can't do anything with the car, and she's still paying on a loan on it. So it's a really shitty situation for people. And this was happening everywhere to a lot of people. I mean, I know a coworker that went through it. I can tell you that's how common this problem was. Now, Ford denies any wrongdoing. They deny knowingly selling these cars with defective DPS6 transmissions. But I'm going to tell you this way. This is like OJ. Everybody knows the guy's guilty, but they can't say that he was guilty. Ford has done things that, that show that they are guilty. They've discontinued the Ford Focus and the Ford Fiesta. They've even stopped selling the Fusions. It's been 3 or 4 years. I think now they're considering there's a new like 2022 or something like that, a Ford Focus that's going to be coming out. but they've stopped production on them because even the newer ones, people were experiencing these issues. They refuse to buy back the cars from owners. They use excuses like the warranty. They have spent millions and millions of dollars fighting this in court, and they just will not help consumers, and they know that they've done wrong. So now, as a result, this thing turned into a mass action or a class action lawsuit out of the United States District Court in California. The case is called Vargas versus Ford, and this is a really shitty deal because it protects Ford, it shields Ford from liability. Based on reports and the evidence at hand, they were facing a potential $4 billion liability. However, with the help of Capstone Law and their lead attorney, Ryan Wu, they were successfully able to finalize the settlement, modify it, and they've only had to pay out under $50 million right now, about $47 million in total damages, which is a big deal. I mean, they were facing $4 billion, and you had to pay $47 million. I mean, that's like I'm paying $10,000 in debt, and they get it down to $400. I mean, it's a pretty big savings. But we'll explain that a little bit further into this about how this was all protected. But we're going to talk about the class counsel for Vargas versus Ford. Now, Capstone Law is the primary law group with this. And as you can see, we'll zoom over. There's Ryan Wu, a bunch of the other ones. Some of them are online, some of them aren't. They are directly involved. There are two other attorneys, Thomas Zimmerman and Russell D. Paul from the Zimmerman Law Offices, and Berger and Montag. And so there's three firms. These guys are all scum trying to keep this thing in place. They know it doesn't provide relief to people. And each one of these guys, I guarantee you, if Ryan Wu or Mr. Zimmerman had one of these cars, they would not opt into this lawsuit. It's a real raw deal for Ford owners. And we'll get into that here. So now we'll talk about the case itself. It had dragged on for several years, and it was appealed back in 2019 by a private nonprofit called Public Citizen. They acted on the behalf of 5 or 6 class members for several reasons. One being that relief was not adequately spread out via the class, the members of the lawsuit, and 2, Ford didn't even dispute their legal fees. Of course not. Why would Ford dispute their legal fees if they're going from $4 billion down to $47 million? I mean, that's a lot of money. I wouldn't complain. And so basically it was about to be thrown out. And I was told it was about to be thrown out, vacated. And if that had happened, people would have been able to get their rights back, hire an attorney, sue, get some kind of relief on their own. But because Ryan Wu was successful in appealing and modifying this class action suit, it was held in place, and it was a total sham, and after it was modified, Public Citizen pulled out its objection. But as you can see, here's Ryan Wu testifying about the class action suit to 3 lower district court judges. He's telling them that, if everybody submitted a claim, it would be closer to that $4 billion mark. But that's simply not true based on what we know they've actually had to pay out a year and a half after the fact. Alright, so now with the Vargas versus Ford transmission settlement, you only had a few options to get relief. You could either submit a claim for hardware replacement parts, you could do arbitration and attempt to have your vehicle repurchased from Ford, or if you had received software flashes, which would also be part of the repair, or if a dealership refused you service. So basically what that means is if you were experiencing problems with your transmission, it was making noise, jerking, whatever, you took it into the dealership, and the dealership turned you away, said, oh, it's just how the car ran, you would be eligible for a cash payment. Now, the thing with the hardware replacement parts is that there were conditions. There were basically caveats that you had to hit certain milestones. If you had less than 3 service repairs, you don't really get anything. You have to have X amount of service repairs and X amount of parts replaced on X amount of visits. The most that a class member could receive in cash payments for hardware parts was like $2,300. Transmission service can cost close to that in a single visit. My clutch repair was over $2,300. And the only other option would be to buy back the car through arbitration. This is literally, if you can see this, this is a whole lot of vehicles that were repurchased by Ford. And some people were lucky. Basically, arbitration worked based on lemon laws. If your car didn't fall within conditions of the lemon law, you couldn't get your car bought back. And the arbiters that that are handling this, they're hired and paid for by Ford. They're not working for you, they're working for Ford. So now I'm going to talk about one of the crappiest things that they did with this lawsuit and how they got so many people sucked into it. Typically with a class action lawsuit, yeah, there's not really a big payout, but usually you have to go online. For example, let's say there's a company being sued for robocalling, and you get a little postcard. Normally you have to go online, give them your information, and maybe if you're lucky in a year or 2, you'll get a check. Well, they did the opposite with this, and this is where the deception comes in. They basically said, you have to opt out. You actually have to go online and tell them on Ford Transmission Settlement by the opt-out date that you didn't want to be part of this. Otherwise, you would be automatically entered into the lawsuit, and when you were automatically entered, you were bound to that lawsuit. You forfeited your legal rights. You could only get relief in the form of whatever the class action suit entitled. And they knew this, and they knew this was a good tactic because people would forget about the postcards. They'd throw them away. You know, I don't want to sign up for something online to get $50 or whatever. And they also deceive people too. A lot of people thought, oh, you know, I could get $2,000. So it was kind of the whole setup of this was deceptive. And if you look at the facts, you had 2-3 million people in Vargas versus Ford versus the 15 to 30,000 people that chose to opt out. And we're going to talk about that, what those people decided to do. All right, so this gentleman here, we're going to talk about a lot of action that's happened. So there have been numerous lawsuits here in the U.S. and outside of the U.S. But this attorney here, his name is Ken Stern. He's a licensed attorney out of Michigan. He specializes in lemon law. He is actually doing his own mass action lawsuit. And unlike the Vargas versus Ford, he's not going to do all this bullshit with caveats and everything. He's basically told people that if you've opted out and you join my lawsuit, we're going to evaluate your claim, put a dollar figure on it, and that's going to be what is added to my mass action suit. He made pleas to people on YouTube to opt out of this. He explained that there were so many caveats. He explained that it was all deception, that people were led to believe that they were going to get $2,000 when that simply wasn't the case. The fine print wasn't there. So currently, right now, he has about over 10,000 people that have chose to opt out of the Vargas versus Ford. His lawsuit is still pending right now. I haven't gotten any updates on that. But, you know, he's doing the right thing. All right, now, there were a few people that chose to go their own route. They chose to pursue Ford on their own. And this was what Ford was worried about. And this is why Ford set Vargas versus Ford up the way that they did, to shield themselves from liability because of lawsuits like these. So Most recently, a couple was awarded $23,000 each, two people. Another couple was rewarded $49,000 each, which is probably twice as much as what they paid for their vehicles for. And that's what Ford was worried about, getting inundated with lawsuits like this, even though they were guilty about it. But there were very few people that opted out, so there weren't a whole lot of people in there. You know, there were 15 to 30,000 people that didn't opt out versus the 2 million. Ford had succeeded in getting people to get sucked into Vargas versus Ford. And that's why people are so fed up with these cars. They don't have any legal rights, anything like that. But these couple of people successfully sued Ford on their own with the lemon law attorney. All right, now we're going to talk about what little or some government action has taken place. So right off the bat, the Department of Justice has requested documents and emails relating to the DPS-6 transmission. They want to know what was said behind closed doors. So they've subpoenaed Ford for these documents. Ford says they're cooperating with them. There are several members of Congress that have requested an investigation into this. The NHTSA has also been inundated with complaints. However, they have not issued a formal recall on the transmissions, and their reason for that is two reasons. One, there have been very few isolated instances where there are injuries. There's just not enough to merit a safety recall. Secondly, because the drivers have power steering and brakes when the transmission fails. But most recently, the lady up here, this is the Michigan State Attorney General, Donna Nessel, has requested the court provide clarity of consumer protection laws in her state to help consumers on how they can take action against Ford on their own. She's trying to get involved in the way that she can, but there's just been so much controversy, so many issues with the DPS-6 transmissions. Alright, so last thing is what can you do as a consumer? There really isn't. If you're bound to Vargas versus Ford, there is really not a whole lot you can do. But I'll talk about it. One of the things that you can do is you can file a complaint with the BBB of Michigan. However, Ford is not compelled to do anything. Really, it just, you submit a complaint. Ford has the opportunity to respond. They'll usually just tell you, go to Ford Transmission Settlements website for more information. Now, you could file a complaint with your local Attorney General or the Michigan Attorney General's office. However, they have to have a certain amount of complaints in order to take any type of legal action. They can't personally represent you in any type of civil litigation. They can only enforce consumer fraud. In this case, Ford technically committed consumer fraud. They knew that the transmissions were bad. They sold them anyways. You can also file a complaint with the NHTSA. Every complaint helps. However, like I said in my previous posts, they have not issued a recall. They have not, they've investigated, they've looked into it, but they just haven't done enough to really offer resolution on this. Now, you could also reach out to your local news station. However, as I had stated in my previous thing, there have been several local news stations that have gotten involved with Ford. Ford really doesn't, they really don't want to buy back the vehicles. They really don't want to address the problems. They'll offer to look at the cars, but nothing more. They try to get out of responsibility. You can submit a claim on Ford Transmission Settlement for a buyback, all the things that I had discussed. However, those deadlines have already passed. You have to hit those milestones, etc., etc. You can try to attempt to sue Ford on your own. However, if you are part of Vargas versus Ford, you're out of luck. You can't do that. If you did opt out, contact Ken Stern or a lemon law attorney in your state. They will be able to help you and give you the best legal advice. However, the statute of limitations has passed, but it's best to contact a lemon law attorney if you are able to do so. And you know, check your lemon laws too. They're not very strong in this case, and you know, a lot of people, you know, they've had the car swell, and then all of a sudden they start getting these issues. You can attempt to work this out with Ford directly, but really, you know, they'll try to avoid responsibility. They'll say, well, your car's out of warranty. You know, we don't take responsibility for this. We'll look at your car, but you're going to have to get it here, pay for it, and if there is something wrong, we're not covering it. Now, you can attempt, you know, if you're rich and you really don't care, you could spend money, try to fix the transmission, have a dealership work on it, or a specialist. However, there's a high probability that you're going to have these problems again. I think there's several 100,000 people that had more than 2 issues with their transmission. I personally had 4 issues with mine, 3 repair attempts. If you're fed up and you feel like you don't have any options, you can either sell or donate your vehicle, get out of it. Problem is with the DPS6 and the Ford Focus, they have really depreciated in value, and if you have a car that doesn't run or drive because of it, it's going to be a hard sell. I mean, I couldn't have a heart to sell my car to somebody, you know, via private sale with these issues, and I, you know, wouldn't want to pass my problems on to somebody else. And, you know, these cash for car places are going to give you a very little bit of money. So, it's going to be difficult. You know, you can donate if you just want to get rid of it. You know, there's a lot of charities that will take the car, and you can get a tax write-off, I guess. But, you know, unfortunately, there's a lot of people, too, where they have the car, it doesn't drive, but they've got like a 10 or 15,000 car note, like Donnell Mayfield in the 3 on Your Side story. But really, those are your options. It's not very good right now. And as time passes, you know, claims have dwindled down. People are getting rid of the cars. You know, there's not going to be more. You're not going to hear much. The court cases are all over. The timelines to submit any claims have already expired. So people at this point really don't have a lot of options in regards to getting assistance through Ford on these cars, so they're pretty much stuck. And they've caused a lot of problems for people. I mean, you know, you buy a car and you have that expectation. You know, you buy a new car because you want to avoid auto repairs, and now you've got a car that, you know, that needs constant transmission work, and there's no fix. There really is no fix. And so that's my reason for bringing this forth today. I want people to know the truth about Ford transmission settlement, because there's a lot of news on there too. There's some articles that say, oh, postcards could be worth thousands of dollars, and that's simply not true. You've got to look at the fine print. You've got to consult a lawyer, because you can't trust what the media says when they sit there and say, well, Ford settled and there's going to be money coming to people. That's simply not true. You have to know the facts. And the best thing to do is to contact a lawyer or attorney, or look at any sources on that. So with that being said, this is my source page. It's hard to see. These are all the websites I went to from the various attorneys' offices, the Ford transmission settlement. One of the big ones is the Detroit Free Press. They really blew the lid off of this. They were the ones that kind of did all the reporting on it, so there's a ton of information on that. So all the links are here from all the sources that I got from this. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a real shitty situation for people. But basically, you know, if you don't want to do all the research and listen to the legal jargon, you know, this is a good little PowerPoint to watch, or a little video here that sort of puts everything into plain English. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this. So just wanted you guys to know the truth about Ford transmission settlement. Don't listen to what the media says. You know, people aren't getting thousands of dollars with these postcards. I submitted a claim. I personally didn't even get a letter back or anything after a year. So it's not true what they're saying. Don't listen to them. Do the research on your own. Consult an attorney or some kind of advisor on this, or talk to your mechanic. They'll tell you, you know, about the transmissions. But that's my advice. Hopefully this helps people.